Hi, I'm Nate. Andrew, just say hi. I'm Andrew.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Andrew.
Great.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, this is Seamus, I'll get you in a second. This is the Plenty of Room podcast. This is our third episode. You can't tell. Today, this is actually pretty cool because one of the things we're doing today is we're covering, circling back to a story we touched on, and it was actually our very first story we ever talked about, which is the proposed housing development at 920 Center Street in Jamaica Plain, the site of the former Poor Clares Monastery. And we have the greedy and terrible developer, Seamus Holland, to join us, who's proposing to build something there. So, Seamus, welcome to the Plenty Room podcast. It's exciting to have you here.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And and then
so,
furthermore, thank you for having such an interest and a positive view on housing, which I think is the loud majority out here.
I wouldn't get ahead of yourself on that one. So let's start with a softball question here. So, obviously you're terrible, but I guess, would you consider yourself more of like a Scrooge McDuck or a Gordon Gekko?
I've always wanted to dive into a pool of gold, so I think Scrooge McDuck is probably for the better there.
Obviously,
that seems pretty sweet.
Like hell. Those are chocolate coins, though. That's what they don't tell you. Awesome. No, so thanks. No, I really appreciate you coming on and reaching out, and because I think there's some interesting developments to talk about here related to this project. Which, when we were talking about this, a couple months ago, it just seemed like it was in a complete roadblock, standstill, and maybe nothing's ever going to happen, and that may not be the case any longer. So I'm excited to hear from you about some of these new developments. So maybe we actually just start by just by way of really quick background. So 920 Center Street in Jamaica Plain, the proposal we were talking about was back then was something like, I think, 123 units of housing, and about 38 of those were senior rental units. That was what was envisioned at the time. And it'd been stuck in about, I don't know, coming up on 5 years of process and constructionism and just not getting anywhere. And we did a lot of editorializing in that first conversation. We'll probably do a little bit more at this time, but we'll try not to put you in the hot seat. We'll try not to put you in a position where you're saying awkward things. So we can do that when you're off, but if we need to. But I guess what I thought makes a lot of sense is to just start with, where are we now? Like at that time, it seemed like this thing was totally stuck. But what are we looking at now? And what's the plan and what's the process ahead?
So we have signs of life again, back on 920, which is why I'm so happy to be here talking again. The project is totally retooled, and it's just kind of takes a whole new shape. But we've basically been given a green light from the EPDA to, yes, go back out, start going to kitchen tables and going to public. And frankly, you guys are the first media members I've talked to about this, getting out on the story of what the new project's going to be. If you start a podcast about our project, you get first steps.
If
I'm the season opener, you got to give the alley-oop back.
That's great.
So the big news is the senior housing component is gone, and we have to demolish the existing monastery. But in its place, we're coming back with a building that respects the 50-foot setbacks all around the parcel and has a higher count of affordable units, where now but they're no longer age restricted. So now it's 80 rental units and 80 for sale condo units. And then we've got up there, and within the apartment complex, 36 of them are going to be affordable at 60 AMI, which is a deeper affordability than we were even last time on total unit count and AMI.
Okay, I just want to pack a couple of terms here, because obviously there's some lingo in this podcast, but trying to make sure we can unpack it for a lay audience too. So AMI, 60% AMI means area median income. So if you take the median income, people earning 60% of that have to be able to qualify for that. It's income restricted housing. I probably actually didn't do a great description of that, but that would be considered that meets the qualification for what Boston considers affordable housing, right? At 60% AMI.
Exactly. We were 80. We had some, because we were that kind of forcing in that senior component and that like market rate condo component before. We had a weird hodgepodge of 80 AMI, 80% area median income, and then 60. So we kind of retooled and became more of a normal project in that we're slightly exceeding our 20% threshold, where I think we're 24% by unit count affordable. And again, we're not using those. Affordable units are completely paid for by the market rate condos. No LIHTC or public funding funds that. And then we're still pushing for passive house construction, meeting the stretch energy code. And our new thing is, the reason that it's totally retooled is obviously we had to come and, respect the arboretums, like the rear setbacks. It came to this time last year, it kind of came to a head, and we realized that, hey, the thing that is worth preserving around here isn't exactly the old brick structure that was here, but what is the true gem? The reason why people are going to want to be here is the arboretum. And if the arboretum was making asks that they did not want to have impacts on, shadows coming over or hydrology, I think we managed that in a good way. But what we didn't do a good job of is kind of those view shed impacts. We just, because that old monastery is right in the middle of the site, we had to come within, 15 feet of our back wall at some points. So knocking the monastery clears that, brings us back to what current zoning is 50-foot setbacks everywhere around the property. And basically when you draw that map on the parcel, you quickly realize the monastery can no longer remain. And unfortunately that monastery had, was tooled in a way that it could have accommodated senior housing. So we just came back with a more normal, not age restricted, but still affordable, still meeting our affordable requirement projects. And what is going to be nice is we have that 50 feet in the back, and then we pledged to do nearly $1 million worth of new plantings along the back. So we are truly growing the arboretum by a half acre, all along our back edge, in an effort, to no longer impact it. So when you are standing at the backside, when you're walking in the gate, or you're just past the Honeywell building, you're going up, and even if theoretically somehow every tree fell in the back of the arboretum, you still would never see our building. So we're doing as best we possibly can to accommodate those view shed concerns. And the thing about it is it happens day one. So those trees that we are planting are going to be huge 12 to 15 inch caliber trees that are towering on day one, and they'll only get thicker and fuller as they get to grow.
Okay, so some of the key things, just to recap some of the key things about this new proposal, so that it's going to be 160 units. Did I hear that correctly?
160 total. So we've upped our unit count by about 35 units.
Okay. And I think it was a half rental, half condos?
And yeah, of which it's a perfect split. So, there'll be two kind of unique buildings. Right. There'll be a vertical swap between the two, but they sit on the same garage.
Yeah.
And it'll be 80 rentals and then 80 for sale condos.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And then you mentioned, so of the unit count, about 24% of those will be.
Yeah. So 36 of those.
36
units total will be 60 AMI, which will be 24% of the unit count and 21% of the gross area of the combined buildings.
Okay. And one of the things, just like to, what I'm going to try to do actually in part of this conversation, I want to steel man some of the biggest complaints or objections that have happened to the extent I'm able to do that. Because in some cases I don't agree with them at all, especially the view shed one, which drives me crazy. I talked about this the first time. I think you should be able to see buildings from a park in a major metropolitan American city. I just think that's super important, but whatever, that's my personal preference. That's their personal preference. But the thing about, so view sheds, you already kind of tackled that. You're putting in $1 million of trees on day one that will block a view of the building that you're putting in, beautiful as it may be. You won't be able to see it from the Arboretum, which actually is different from how it is today, because currently you can see the monastery from the Arboretum. So that view is no longer going to be there. Second key thing is, I think this is one that gets brought up a lot, is that like because it's in, what is it? It's a conservation district. There's like a zoning overlay around near the Arboretum that requires basically a 50-foot buffer between the lot line of where the Arboretum ends and where like the building in the whatever building is in the lot abutting it begins.
Precisely. Precisely.
Okay. So that's 50 feet. But of course, that was put in place after a bunch of buildings were already built along its perimeter, as happens with all zoning in Boston, is that we rewrote the zoning to basically make illegal all the buildings that had existed there previously. So you couldn't actually put, the monastery does not meet those requirements. How far is the monastery from the lot line?
The monastery would just about make it as right now as it stands. So you'll be in roughly the same spot. But yeah, what you're saying describes, frankly, half of the triple deckers in Jamaica Plain would be illegal as of today. Yeah. I mean, the planning department actually did a big presentation over the last couple of years about basically 99% of parcels in Boston are non-conforming with zoning in at least one area. So that I wouldn't be surprised if it was out of conformance. Okay, so you're saying the current monastery is about 50 feet setback from the line right now? Yep. Well,
okay.
I think it moves back just slightly. So there's but roughly where you see it now will be where it is, but there'll be you'll see this big basically we've been referring to it as the JP Green Monster, just a wall of evergreen trees along the back there.
Okay. All right. So and then the building, and the new building itself, would that conform with the setback requirement?
The new building will the new building, all sides of it will be 50-foot setback from center, not only the rear setback, but both side setbacks and center street. It's all going to be, we basically found our property line and just offset it in 50 feet in all forms, and then we said that's where we build it. No variances.
Is that the requirement? 50 feet setbacks on all sides right now?
Yeah. So so that was when we kind of went back to the drawing board. It's on every set of drawings we have now. It's just a red line everywhere, 50 feet, and we said, let's live in here and create the best building we can, given those parameters. Yeah.
All right. And I'll editorialize a little bit here too. I think the idea of like a side setback of 50 feet on, I'm a big booster of the idea of we should have apartment buildings and dense housing around the perimeters of our parks, because we want to make these more accessible to more people. This is basically enshrining large lot single family housing in a lot of cases, or it's preventing the building of a lot of things. I'm glad you were able to figure out something that could make the math work. I guess
we violate by height density now. We wouldn't be allowed to go. I think 35 feet is the existing zoning, and we're going to go up to 57. So so that's the variant. That's the key variance that we'll be seeking.
Okay, so now the big one is going to be height. Now, how does this new building affect shadows? So if view shed is not an issue, what's the shadow impact of this one?
So I can send that shadow study, and if you want to find a way to link it in the show, we basically have shown that there's going to be no net new shadows, actually less shadows from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Any given day of the year. At the tail ends of March and September, there'll be some shadows that leak over around 6 o'clock, but those days of the year, those equinoxes, the sun sets at like 6:40, so relatively de minimis. And to amplify that shadow, I mean, the reason the shadow studies are so important here is obviously it's the Arboretum is right behind us. So we've gone ahead and our landscape team has like done numerous studies on how much sun each one of those trees exactly along the back would need during growing season. And we're still within best practices of total hours of sunlight during, we exceed total hours of sunlight during growing season. So we went down and, you know, tagged each tree on their side and made sure that we were compliant. You know, those things are not going to be in poor health standards.
Yeah, I think that because what we're talking about, like the main concern that's been raised by the Arboretum leadership is about the magnolias. Is that right?
Exactly.
And yeah, because just to quote something that from some of the reading I did over this was, yeah, so some of these magnolias are over 100 years old. Some species are endangered in Massachusetts. They can't be relocated or replaced. So if the shadow and soil compaction modeling is even slightly off, the harm is permanent and irreversible. And so, yeah, I guess.
Furthermore,
make sure you guys are taking this seriously.
You know, furthermore,
let me hold on. Let me correct myself. I felt like I was a little too dismissive of that idea. I personally, I'll wear my biases on the sleeve here. I personally think that even if this were to come at the expense of some magnolias, I think the trade-off, and this is the conversation we need to get into when it comes around housing again, is just acknowledging and accepting trade-offs are involved here. Always. There are always trade-offs, and you just have to make a call as to which is more important. I think providing homes to 160 new people at the boundary of the Arboretum that's respecting this 50-foot setback is putting in $1 million of trees and is like near, you know, like transit and is like increasing accessibility to the Arboretum for many more people. And, you know, like if that does have a marginal impact on the health of some magnolias, that sucks. But like, that's a trade-off I personally am willing to accept. I know a lot of people won't. So that's why I want to make sure you're taking it seriously. So, but yeah, I didn't mean to be dismissive in my voice about that earlier, but yeah.
And, you know, it's easy to neglect a couple trees, and Ned is frankly, actually, Ned is a good guy to work with, and you understand where he's coming from. And I guess that's where the people who are going to move here are going to want to be at the Arboretum. Yeah. So from that light, it's like, look, our future customers, our future home buyers are coming here, and they're like, they have an expressed interest in being next to the magnolias that we're at. And just again, not to, you know, to emphasize, we're going to name the building the Magnolia. So, you know, far be it from us. You know, our landscape team, it's Mi-kyung Kim. She's the absolute best. She's an internationally recognized, she's the all-star on our team, and we're all like trying to catch up with her. She's light years ahead of, you know, 16 Penny, and I'll even throw our architects under the bus, but she's the best. And we always go, it's like MK Design is her name. And the quip from the Globe editorial page was, she didn't get MK Design for killing my magnolia trees. So that's not what we're in the business of doing here.
Yeah. I honestly, I think nothing speaks to the fact that you guys are taking it seriously more than the fact that you're naming it the Magnolia, because like that would be a bad look, right? This building goes up and all of the magnolias die. That would really stink. So yeah,
that would hurt.
Yeah. So okay, I appreciate that.
And then just to reiterate, it's like it's in the condo docs in perpetuity that we are funding the upkeep and the, you know, if any of those one of those trees is going to fall one of these years, it's in the condo docs that we're planting a new one right there.
You're talking about the green monster, right?
The green monster. Yep. That's always, that will always be there.
Awesome. All right. Couple of other things I want to make sure to kind of crank on here. So I think one of the concerns that was raised up about the initial proposal, maybe that doesn't apply here, is climate and net zero concerns. You know, someone had mentioned there was an architect who specialized in environmental system, thought that the current proposal or the previous proposal couldn't meet the mayor's net zero carbon requirements for large developments. So I don't know if that was true. That was just my reading of the article. And then it's like, yeah. And then what does this new project or proposed development, how does it address that concern?
So that was a professor at the GSD Kiel Mo. Specializes in climate science, and he had apprehensions around mass timber design. So this new project, not necessarily explicitly because of the climate concerns, has switched to a more conventional timber frame. 2x4 stud walls, and then steel framing. But we're still with RDH, who's our environmental consultant. We're still aiming towards passive house. Truthfully, the reason we switched from mass timber back to more conventional building style was actually a function of height. Mass timber. I don't know how much you guys have looked into it and studied it. It's kind of like a thick beam and deck system. So you're always going to be taller floor to floors than in more conventional steel or concrete system. So, and then also now to conform inside of our box, mass timber wants to be really orthogonal. It wants to be a very plain rectangle, whereas now we're jogging and diving to make our 50-foot setbacks. So that kind of went away, but nonetheless, we're a little shorter, and we're using a system that is a shorter floor-to-floor height, just to continue to address, view shed issues.
Yeah.
And we're remaining to all the net zero, no fossil fuels on this building. We're going to continue to work with RDH and go passive house.
Okay. Another concern, it's funny because I feel like one of the, I think, concerns of the early versions of the plans was that I think you guys initially proposed demoing the monastery, and then, if I understand, due to community opposition to demolishing the monastery, you proposed to keep it, which seemed to open up another whole can of worms that ultimately became untenable. And now we're back to that idea. Can you just walk us through what's the timeline of this? How did this happen?
So first and foremost, if we could only work with these nuns for the rest of our lives, they are the sweetest. Like the people that currently own it, the St. Clares, they are love them. They're what you picture is like just sweet women. So it took, first and foremost, getting the community on board is one thing, but then also just like, this was their home. So at first it was hard for them to imagine it being demoed. And we kind of talked it through, and that was the first iteration. That quickly fell on its face. So then it was like, okay, if you did sell this, could you reimagine it as a senior housing project for deeply affordable, units? And it kind of fit their mission that fit their mission statement. So we were able to get them back on board with that. And then about this time last year, the winding road, we're like, well, do you remember when we were going to demo it? Is that okay? And at this point, the sisters were like, whatever it takes to get us, this building sold and our new monastery finished in Westwood, we need to be there. At this point, I think they just are done with the process and want to be, finish out their building in Westwood, which we're also doing for them. They have additional sisters who are in another parish who are going to join them in Westwood right after we put the addition on their chapel out there. But that's kind of, we're all waiting for this zoning to hit, and then that will allow for our ability to fund the big additional 20 rooms that they're going to have in Westwood. Then speaking to the public, at first there was initial outcry to preserve what was already there, but I think we were sat down in a room in the DPDA, April or May of last year, and they said, look, in Boston, we have a lot of old religious brick buildings. This is not the one that we're intent on fighting a battle to save. The real gem here is the Arboretum. So that was the day the project just kind of had to be reinvented again. So that's how we got here today. And that's how we got to a point where we're allowed to go to kitchen tables and you know, talk to you guys. And even in our initial meetings with like our IAG, it seems like people understood and got it. Like they're like, I get it. Something, it's going to change.
All right. What's the IAG?
Impact Advisory Group.
All right. What's their point?
So they're part of the Article 80 process for, you know, again, for lay people, sorry for all the acronyms, but, you know, they're selected by, you know, city councilors and other city reps to be a small 10 to 12 person board that acts as a, you know, they'll be in every meeting and they'll have a special voice during this Article 80 process. So this group of 10 were given to us by the BPDA and they kind of speak on behalf of the neighborhood. A lot of them are in like Jamaica Hills Association or other neighborhood groups. So they're kind of voicing the concerns of the neighborhood as we push forward. So they were frankly the first people to see, you know, probably 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago now. They were the first people to see this new iteration once the BPDA gave the thumbs up that we've mitigated the concerns well on this new project, and it's worthy of going back out to the public.
Okay. There's a lot of threads I want to unpack here. So one thing, just thinking about the nuns, actually. So it's just worth keeping in mind that the nuns left this site in 2023, I believe. So it's been 2.5 years, I think, since they've left the site to move to start their new chapter in their, you know, kind of monastery story. By the way, I think you feel all right. You should talk about your family's connection with the nuns too, because I think that's because actually I met with the abbess. I went to Westwood because I had a job out there, so I actually met with her. And she mentioned, I think it was your grandfather did some carpentry work there like 50 years ago or something.
Yeah, if you couldn't guess with a name like Seamus, Irish grandfather, fresh off the boat from Cork County, Ireland, came in. His trade was carpentry, and he started Hall and Construction, which was where we all came from. The first thing they did was just, you know, roofing on religious structures, you know, church steeples and all that. So we, you know, part of it, and then over the years we developed a relationship with them. It's actually my grandfather started it. My dad actually in college put together the altar that we carefully took apart and put in an exact form back in their house in Westwood. And I guess that makes me the third generation of of people working with the St. Clair nuns here. So, you know, the goal here is to, you know, that was like when it came time for them to realize that their existing building they can no longer maintain. You know, one, their order wasn't as large as it was in, you know, the 80s and 90s. Two, a lot of the sisters are getting older, and they do truly need new ADA compliant buildings, you know, bigger bathroom stalls, elevators. It got to a point that it was too much, so they moved out 2 years ago, and they moved into a smaller space in which you saw in Westwood, but they're itching to expand to bring on the rest of their sisters who are currently some are in DC, some are in Florida. They want to be reunited in the new space in Westwood, and the sale of this property, which is contingent on zoning, will be the vehicle for us to build out the rest of the, you know, the new wing that comes on in a brand new chapel for their property in Westwood.
Okay. Yeah. I guess I also just want to talk a minute about what the impact of delays for projects like this had, like, not just like, I don't know, takes a psychological toll on all the parties that are involved, but also the nuns are still paying for water and heat and property insurance on that property that they haven't occupied for 2.5 years. And actually, as a result of being unoccupied in an older building, at one point, I think there was a burst pipe because there was one section that just wasn't getting enough heat. And so a water main burst. And so they had to mitigate that and take care of that. And then they have
I
to
was
keep
there.
the water
I
as
was
well.
I was there at 9 p.m. at night trying to figure out where that pipe burst, and up to my knees. That was a fun one.
Sure. Yeah. It's just not like it's and then and then I think there's been a big mold problem also, partly as a result of that burst pipe and also just the fact that no one's there. So it's like, even if people were like, no, we really should save this place, it's unsalvageable at this point, because of how much damage has been done on the property just as a result of it being unoccupied for 2 years.
Frankly, 5 years ago, they were at a point where it was like, these number of roofing projects that would need to happen would frankly bankrupt us, so it was time to move on, and that was not an easy process for them. So one, accepting the fact that they were going to leave their home that was there for nearly 90 years as an order and going to a new place. It was a hard decision for them to make, but one that they frankly needed to. I liken it to anyone else's like grandmother. Like, I know they're in a unique living arrangement, but if you picture your grandparents like needing to downsize and be in a handicap accessible living space, that's what we're trying to provide in a situation that fits their like lifestyle and their livelihood, and their religious affiliation.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about all of the arguments I haven't brought up about why this project sucks. Andrew, do you have any?
I could steer into the win on one.
Andrew, yeah, please. Yes,
Andrew, you go first.
Here. This sounds good.
Cook, man.
The next biggest, so if we've mitigated the concerns of the Arboretum, I'm sure, as is many other project space, it's going to be the question of traffic. I think, or everyone on this podcast sees the vision of a multimodal city, and we are trying to steer into that 110%. We have, we're committed to building a new bus stop out front for the 39. We have a blue bike station. We have about a thing that in our garage.
Wait, sorry, the 39 or the 38?
What did I just say? I think it's the 39, right?
The 38 is the one that goes up Center Street, but
38. Yeah, the 38. Then sorry, forgive me.
Okay,
I was off by one. Forgive me.
Shame.
and then blue bikes on site, which is standard on these size developments. And then one of the other things that we're committing to is we're going to give Charlie cards on the first year, a year-long Charlie cards to everyone in the apartment for the first year, just as another push of just getting people to not take cars and go and use Forest Hills, which is a short walk away.
Right. How far is it? I think in the first podcast I said like less than half a mile, and my wife corrected me. She's like, no, I think it's like 0.6 or something like that. It's under a mile, but it's like, I was like,
it's 0.6. If we could, I don't know if we'll be able to do it, but if you could cut through the Arboretum, it would be even shorter. You didn't have to go out and around, but your wife was right. 0.6.
Yeah, we need to have a correction section at the end of our podcast because I'm probably ripping up all kinds of fake facts. All right,
was it the 38 or 39 bus?
How many parking? What are you going to do about parking?
So as it stands right now, we're following BPDA recommendations, which is 1-to-1. Yeah, so we're 160. Our IAG there are members on it who would like to see that number be less. Reduction in, that is a big push everywhere. The reduction, frankly, I talk to the JP Yimbies all the time. The big push is the reduction, like the complete eradication of, parking mandates. But then another big push on ours is from the other half of our IG is actually a few more specific to visitor parking. So that's a big, I think that's a interesting push that we might have to ask for, is like, hey, it seems like our IAG wants, which we wouldn't make right now, but our IAG wants like specifically deeded, 15 spots or 20 spots only for visitors. So it's something that has come up on our, we've only shown them this plan only a week ago, and that was their first point. I think the concern is if someone was a dinner guest, they don't wind up parking, up in the streets on Moss Hill. So something we have to weigh the pros and cons on. Not anyway decide whatsoever on how to address visitor parking.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Yeah, I mean, there's any number of ways to cut that. I guess, I'm not on the IAG, but if I had a vote, I guess I would say it's like the idea of carving out a certain number of spaces just for visitors. That seems sensible to me, but I would just eat into the 160 and carve that off. Be slightly less than 1-to-1. Because you just look at, car ownership in citywide is like 0.92 per household right now. So it's less than 1. Oddly, and this is, I'm actually big in the parking reform area. So like, I want to get rid of parking mandates citywide. That's not the drum I'm going to bang today. But I think the thing, and what's, okay, but also like with large projects, there are no parking mandates. This is just kind of a negotiation between the planning department. What you're calling the BPDA is now the planning department, Seamus. Got to catch up with the times. They rebranded 2 years ago, but the planning department, it kind of negotiates with this. So they kind of, and it's supposed to be rooted in the local context, like what people are actually doing. But so they, and then I guess you're supposed to do like a transportation study to kind of arrive at what that should be. But I guess given all the other things you're doing to encourage other modes of transportation and its proximity to that, the idea of 1-to-1, that just seems a little bit, it honestly just feels like a little bit of excessive to me and out of step with current trends in multifamily development in the Boston area. That said, the kind of inconvenient fact for like pro parking reform and YIMBY folks in Boston is that as Boston has become less affordable, wealthier people are moving to the city and they bring more cars. But what we also know is, so actually car ownership has been trending upwards in recent years. I probably shouldn't be saying that, but it's true. But it's because the more this becomes an enclave of rich people, the more cars there are going to be in the city. And that's there's a strong correlation between wealth and the number of cars that people have. That said, it's also known that there's a causal relationship between the number of parking spaces you provide on site and the number of cars that are brought there. And so if you actually want to encourage a less car-centric style of living, I'm not saying you don't build any parking. I'm just saying like don't build an excessive amount of parking, because then those spaces will be filled by people who bring extra cars as a result of it.
Maybe it's striking the balance as some sort of maintaining the 1-to-1 that is the recommended overlay, but specific, not deeding them to people, but maybe making that, listening to our IAG and making 20 of them or so, visitor only, but that's me thinking aloud. Frankly, we had our second IAG meeting about an hour before this, so it's fresh on mind, but anyway, I think if I picture the people who are coming here, it's like demographic trends that we're kind of predicting. It's like I see a lot of like I do see this being a lot of downsizers. Like I do see like the more suburban single families in JP, maybe they sell and grab a condo here so they get to stay in JP, can walk, and people who are retirement age are going to need less cars. They'll get away with just one, and they're also going to be driving at off-peak hours.
Yeah.
I also see a lot of doctors and nurses, especially in the apartment building, who are just biking to Faulkner,
Yeah.
biking to Longwood. I see that as a huge. Those are the two kind of picturesque demographics. So
I mean, that couldn't be a better spot for, like doctors at either place. So that makes total sense for the medical community to want to move there. So yeah, be sensitive to who's moving in, right? Like that makes a lot of sense.
100%. And those demographics probably wouldn't need as much, car parking or vehicles. But yeah, we're early on in the process. We'll see. That seems to be going to be probably the more contentious issue moving forward as we go back out to the public, is my guess.
Okay. Well, let's get the height as well, I'm guessing. But like that is, at least from the Arboretum side, that seems achievable. I think one of the things is that because of this, like the building, and you should share a screen at some point and actually show us some visuals, because you can share a screen here. And so you probably should just give us a sense of what we'd be looking at. The building's going to be a little bit closer to the road, right? Than the current monastery is, right?
It is.
Which I think is fine, but so people know it's going to be closer to the road.
So if I pop on the share of the screen here, is that
I see it.
visible? So here it is. I guess give it some nice, pretty renderings first. So here, what'll show here is here's kind of some pictures along renderings around Center Street here. This is what you'll be seeing. It will come closer to Center Street, but we're still going to be observing that 50-foot setback, so we're not looking for a variance there. We also are going to, if you know that big rotary, like the big traffic circle that's out front, that gets wiped away and it becomes completely greened out. So not only are we going to be doing huge plantings along the black, not just the green monster out back there, we're also going to be continuing kind of the traditional green canopy that is along the street as you're driving down. It kind of dies at our corner, and we're gonna bring that back along. And then
wait, sorry, Seamus, did you say something did you say something about the rotary?
Sorry, how if you're there now, if you are looking at the existing building right now, right in front of the monastery, there is let me see. Yeah,
there's like a semicircle driveway.
Exactly. Okay. And that was, it's like lives right. If this is the monastery building, it used to live like right here.
Yeah.
That completely goes away and becomes green space now.
Got it.
So as you're driving along Center Street, you feel like you're, frankly, in the Arboretum again. Like, because if you look at our neighbors, they're completely treed along the front as well, and it continues that green highway that we have going along down Center Street.
Okay.
And just for incremental, this is very diagrammatic, picture. But you see, here's the outline of where the monastery is now, and we march forward a little, about 25 feet or so, but we're still always respecting the 50-foot setback. We're about 75 feet from 80 feet or so from Center Street when you're right dead center of the building. Yeah. And then I think the most important, those views worth showing is, here's the commitment to all the new plantings. These are what you see.
Let me stop you for 1 second here, because I think when it comes to plantings, this is something I hear get brought up at times, because like every developer always presents like, look at all the trees. And then there's actually one not far from here. It's at Center and Weld Street, is like a thorn in the side of a lot of people on Rosendale's side, because the developer for that project proposed like a bunch of sidewalk improvements. There's a lot of mitigation things, street plantings, and none of that ever happened. So like, again, like it always looks great when you look at the renderings, because there are all these trees. You'd already talked a little bit about this, are you guys are actually committing to this, but like, just don't let that one, don't glide over that. Actually talk about that, because I think that's important for some people who just kind of have a knee-jerk suspicion when they see trees in a rendering, because they don't believe it.
It's frankly the thing that gave this project life. The tree, we're calling it the tree easement. The reason when you guys had the season premiere of this podcast, this thing was completely dead. It was before, the city saw the commitment to the level of planting we were going to do, and just basically frankly the size and scale of them. These are going to be monster trees day one. I don't know if you can still see it, but even if you were to wipe out all the trees on the Arboretum side, and it's the thing that gave this project life again, you would still see all these trees. So we won't fall by the wayside as the other, the other evil developer in Rosendale, but this is absolutely necessary for our project to come back alive.
Actually, tell me, what am I looking at here? Is that gray block? Is that the building that you guys are building, or no?
So
or is that the Honeywell building?
So I should do a better job of explaining this. So if you just walk straight in from the gate, and if you could imagine, the Arboretum needs to reserve the right to take down trees and plant new trees as, they're growing, and, they're a tree museum. We went to the extreme of, if you theoretically took down all of these trees, harvested all of these trees from the Honeywell building, which you see in this.
That's the Honeywell building right there. Got it.
Yeah. Yep. And then this is their, maintenance facility. If all those, and
your development is behind that brown fence.
Yeah. Behind the fence you see there, this is what you would see day one. And just emphasize that point.
That's why it's $1 million. Those are very big trees. Okay.
They're monsters. And just to emphasize the point, this is what you see right now in summer and winter. Like there's already additional tree screening on the Arboretum side, but we went over and above of just like, let's just build a wall that will, completely block. Because you do get, I guess, if you walked in now, you could, this is a photo I snapped this winter. You take a couple steps up behind the Honeywell building, you do get to see the existing monastery in the back there. That will not be the case.
Okay. Got it.
And I can jump back into any one of those slides if you want to go see them.
I think it looks good.
That tree, I can't emphasize it enough. It's what breathed life back into this project of, hey, what are the constraints? Is first and foremost this view shed issue. How do we correct it? And it's like, let's use only our side of the property. Let's block the bit. Let's
Where
truly
did that
just
idea come from, by the way?
My big smart head. I pushed it on the. I brought it to Meek Young Kim, and she was like, I've only frankly used these big trees on like kind of private residences and one-off situations. And I was just like, and that's like, if you live in, some nice suburb in California and you no longer want to see your neighbor, on a residential side, that's what she would do. This is, on the scale of an arboretum.
Okay. I think this project looks awesome. One thing I'm wondering about, and I think I asked this in the beginning, you probably did cover it and I wasn't paying attention enough, but like where does this go from here? And then also like, where do you need help? Because obviously we're I'm strongly interested in seeing this project happen. So what do I do?
We're back on the Article 80 tour, and we're a large project review. So and that's our process. And again, for people who aren't 100% familiar, that's the process in which we bring a new large project like this through zoning and through entitlements, and basically get us to building permit. So right now, we're early on. We're on the kind of the kitchens and our favorite podcast tour.
Zoom podcast tour.
Yeah. The number one fan of Plenty of Room is here. So we are going to the the city will put together a notice period. We're going to deliver all of this new documentation, all our new floor plans, all our new elevations, our unit mix, our affordability, basically all the project fact sheet, and then some back to the city. And that will trigger our 30-day notice period. After that 30-day notice period, there'll be a public meeting. Those public meetings tend to be dominated by some of these
opponents.
Sometimes they're dominated by traffic concerns and these things. So if we could get more people that are see beyond the pale, Waymos and the multimodal cities are coming, which I truly actually believe in. I think that is kind of the only way through with all the the true traffic concerns people have.
Yeah.
The more like-minded people that we can come to these public meetings, I'll provide that information to you guys as soon as I know the dates. Anyone who would want to come, any resident of Boston can come and speak and share their opinion, share their support, share their concerns, and that's the forum that these projects get approved or denied.
What, even rough time, when would that even happen? Like that public meeting, the 30-day comment period and stuff like that. When is it? When I get it. There's huge error bars on this, but when might that even happen?
Late June, early July.
Oh, soon. That's sooner than I thought. I'm glad I asked that question, because I thought you were gonna say next May or something, like next year or something. Okay.
Hey, if we keep going and we keep this, sense of momentum that we have here from our trees, we theoretically could be good and entitled by the fall.
Okay. That would be awesome.
It would be it would be one of the biggest projects entitled this year in the city. I think the winter and early spring, there was nothing over 15 units. We're starting to see some change, like BCDC didn't, which is another Boston civic design community who didn't even have any projects to review in April. So we need to get built. People are itching. We need to get building again.
Okay. I guess the good news, insofar as they're going to be readily available to review your plans, right? So there won't be any backup on that. So I guess that's good. Okay.
And frankly, I don't see myself as I don't see myself as a developer per se. I'd rather we're going to be the general contractor on this. So I'd see myself more as a builder. Might be why it took me 5 years to get to this point, but nonetheless.
Well, and actually, so I guess that leads to my kind of last line of question, which maybe we can always put a pin in it and come back to it in 3 years or something like that. But if we were to do this all over again, what would your ideal process have looked like? Something that's obviously there's always going to be constraints and things like that, but what was a plausible scenario? Because clearly it didn't have to be like this. I firmly believe that, and that's why I'm an advocate for changing and reforming the way we do land use planning in Boston. But what is a ideal, somewhat plausible way of proceeding, getting a project like this through the finish line so it doesn't take 5 years, so we can learn from the future how to do this better?
Well, it's not hand up. Some of it is our own fault. We didn't identify, early on, we didn't identify the stakeholders correctly. We should have gotten earlier, and, we should have gotten to the Arboretum faster and stronger. We made our initial mitigation was if we chop a floor off the building and then turn it into an L shape, that should suffice. And, we just weren't, we thought that would be the path forward. And because we were following a constraint that we frankly put on ourselves as well in preserving the old monastery. If we did a better job of stakeholder identification and saw, the reason anyone was going to want to buy or rent here is because they're going to want to be near the Arboretum. If we noticed that first, and also if the city pushed us there first faster, that would have helped as well, and we would have got to this place quicker. But say la vie. We have a beautiful city, and the reason being so is we do have, we do take these things seriously. Should they, I hope we don't wind up choking ourselves to death on that point, but we don't live in Houston either, where absolutely anything goes up. So that was my diplomatic answer.
Very diplomatic. That's, know what? And I totally get it. I'm not going to press you further on it, but that was good. No, I appreciate that. Awesome. Andrew, what do you got? Got any zingers? Is he frozen? What a time. Can you hear me,
shine, Andrew? Come on.
I don't know if he's, can you hear us, man? We'll have to edit this part out.
I can now. Yeah, I was having some issues there for a minute.
Okay.
So that's right. Everything was great, and then it just kind of went wonky. So I don't know what happened.
All good.
We'll figure.
Cool.
But it sounded good.
Boy, I hope this recording came out well. So we're gonna find out. Watch as everything's gonna be on echo when we're listening to it afterwards. But we'll just do it again if we have to.
Well, I'll get the number of the bus right the first time.
Yeah.
No, this is great.
Well, honestly, that said, though, there's also, you're going to have things going down Jamaica Way and Arbor Way too. So it's like that actually, there's like 2 places you could actually theoretically pick up a bus near there, which would be pretty great.
You're sure if you want to take a bus to Longwood, it's like a 2-minute walk just past the rotary, and there's a spot right there that can pick you up.
It's awesome. All right. Well, Seamus, what questions did you want me to ask that I didn't?
Particularly, I think we covered the 2 key issue points on this bill is going to be 1, Arboretum concerns, and 2, traffic management. And how do we balance, we're going to have people like us who are kind of what I think we're skating to where the puck's going, where we become a true multimodal city, but like, how do you steel man that argument against people who are going to say, this is, doesn't have nearly enough cars parking in the garage? How does that work? I don't know. I'm curious about how you try to meet people where they are and how you think about that, or is the right course of action just say, hey, look, like, this is the future. Why are we going backwards?
Yeah, and also just we need to meet the future with like the built environment that's suited for it. So I guess that's it's kind of restating the same point there. Again, as it relates to parking and traffic, it's like if you want to see more overused parking and congestion in the area, you build 250 parking spaces there. There's a causal relationship demonstrated between the amount of parking that you build and congestion. Like this, I've talked about this in our second episode when I talked about parking stuff for like a half an hour, just ranted for half an hour straight. And actually there's a great quote from the council president from City of Somerville, talked about when they first removed parking mandates for all places within like a half mile of transit, which effectively covered like 70% of the city. And then they went back and they just ripped the rest of it out because they're like, well, okay, it's basically a done deal. And it was nothing burger when we did it the first time. So let's just get the whole thing. And I think it's Ben Ewan Campen was his name. And this is going back in like 2024 or something. And he said like, for like 50 or 60 years, people are concerned about like parking, the availability of parking. And so the intuitive strategy is you build more parking. And it's like, but it has the counterintuitive effect of increasing the amount of cars that want to park in this place and adding more congestion and traffic in the area. So it's like, you have to take the counterintuitive step of actually building fewer parking spaces there, which then creates concerns about, but what about all the spillover in Moss Hill and all the residential streets? Well, it's like, why don't we get serious about permit parking in residential areas? The mayor did something in, I think, 2019, when she was a councilor, of a nominal fee for like something like, you know, when you bring on a second car, it's like $50 or something like that for a parking permit. And it got nuked at the time because the politics weren't there yet. You know, there's someone talking about like, they're robbing our right of a car to ownership, blah, blah, blah. The fact of the matter is, like, the politics have shifted on that considerably. And I do think like a sensible policy around permit parking, again, that may not even be the right regime, but there are ways of managing on-street parking demand such that it doesn't flood the neighboring areas. But like, I don't think that certainly what has been proven is that the answer is not building more off-street parking, because that is not going to solve the issue for sure. So it does require a broader thinking about how we approach parking holistically. That's why I helped start Better Parking for Boston, because we had two main pillars of focus. One is getting rid of dumb mandates that require a certain amount of off-street parking requirements for sub-Article 80 projects. But then the second one is make sure you're managing on-street parking effectively. Because when you get rid of those mandates, you're not going to, because most developers are going to build what the market is looking for and what demands, because it's going to get hard to get underwritten for one. If they're not going to build any parking and just assume everyone's going to ride bikes, that may not actually pan out. It may get hard to be financed. Also, that may have lower sale or rent prices afterwards. So like the payday's less. So they have an incentive to build. I always say, like, you know, you don't have to trust developers for their motives. You trust their incentives, and the incentives are aligned with building enough parking that's right sized for what the market's actually looking for. Which is why when you're explaining, like, we're thinking about who's moving in here. It's people downsizing and also people that are working in the medical corridor, which makes total sense. You know, who naturally may be inclined to have less cars than you might also have. So that's why you have to think about parking stuff holistically.
It's uniquely expensive to dig down and provide additional, you know, go down another level to provide additional parking. So the worst thing I could possibly imagine is building this big garage, you know, that taking that huge financial expense and then turning around and seeing it empty. That would be maddening.
Actually, I don't know if you've done any of how much per stall, per parking stall, or per parking space? Have you had any math on that?
We're like $75K a key.
Okay.
Just based on, you know, how far, you know, based on what we're digging roughly. Yeah. That's, you know, we also are building the plane as we fly it, because we're, you know, this project has shifted and shape-shifted 101 different times. So we're always repricing, and, you know,
well, honestly,
so
70, just to underscore that, 75,000 a parking space. Now, actually, that honestly seems a little low to me, possibly considering that, you know, you're going subterranean. These are underground. You know, I've heard in some places in Boston that structured parking costs as much as $150,000 a space, depending on where you're building it. But like, let's take it at $75,000. But again, this is something I also like always bring up. Like, the cost of that will ultimately be borne by people who move into these places, the renters or the owners. Like that's like, you're not just going to eat that cost. That has to be passed on to people who are going to move into those places. So if we demand more and more of that, and often it's a lot of the people that are making the arguments, well, we need to build more affordable housing. I'm like, what are you doing to drive up the cost of housing by requiring this place to add more parking spaces at $75,000 a clip? At
year 5.
At year 5. Right. Yeah. So, okay. I'm glad we touched on that. So yeah, I think I want to
shout out Elvira. I met her with one of the JP UMBs. She's I met her over right at Jamaica Plain last time they all met, and she's kind of beating the drum on this as well, right? Eliminating the parking counts here. I was just like, where do I sign up? where do I sign? Yeah. Great. She's great.
There's a petition, by the way, you should sign. I will send this to you after the call, because Elvira and I helped create it together, actually. So we're working really closely on that. Yeah. So Better Parking for Boston and Abundant Housing we're working together.
You gotta be kidding me. Well, it's a small EMB world. Yeah. I honestly didn't know that, but it makes sense.
Awesome. All right. Well, Seamus, okay. That was a great question that I didn't ask you, that you asked yourself. Any other questions that you should ask yourself?
No. Thank you guys again. This was awesome.
Yeah.
Always love to talk about our city.
Yeah. Had a blast. All right. Well, thanks so much, Seamus.
Cool.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Bye,
And
guys.
this
Thank
is
you.
Plenty of room. I don't know how to do sign offs. We just say bye. All right. Have a good one.
Thanks, Jeff.